Alrighty. Good morning / good afternoon, wherever you are in this country. My name is Zane Velji. Welcome to today's webinar on our Vote Housing campaign. I'm so excited to be here today with you and with my campaign colleagues. Let me just quickly introduce them. You'll be hearing from them later today as well. We got Al Wee from the Canadian Lived Experience Leadership Network. Al is here to talk about the campaign and the network's participation in the Vote Housing campaign. We got Stefania Stachia from the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, who's also one of our deputy campaign directors, as well as Dallas Alderson from the Co-op Housing Federation, another one of our campaign deputy directors as well. You'll be hearing a lot more from them later on this morning / afternoon. My name is Zane Velji. I am the campaign director for Vote Housing. This is a real exciting opportunity. I have to be honest. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about what you see in front of you, this vibrant campaign called Vote Housing. We're going to walk you through the plan. We're going to walk you through what the campaign is, why it is, why we so desperately need it in this moment in time in Canadian history. So as you can probably tell, I'm quite enthusiastic to talk about this campaign. You'll be hearing a lot more from me later, but for now, how about I pass it on to Al? But before I do that, let me just quickly run you through some housekeeping items. Number one, this webinar is available through simultaneous interpretation. You go to the bottom of your screen, you find that little globe, you can jump onto simultaneous interpretation on there. A PDF of this deck in French is also available, so you'll be seeing the English version that we'll be running you through, but worry not, we have a French version that Steph has linked in the chat. So if you want to find that, you can find that link to the chat that will pop up and you'll get the French translated version available to you. And as always on these webinars, please feel free to both use the chat function to get to know one another on this webinar, as well as the Q&A function for us at any time. We'll have a moment at the end of this formal presentation to take your questions. So feel free to jump those in at any moment you feel comfortable and have any questions. So without further ado, as I mentioned, I'm going to throw it over to Al Wee from the Canadian Lived Experience Leadership Network to get us kicked off, and we'll go from there. Al, floor is yours.
Yeah. Thanks, Zane. As co-chair of the Canadian Lived Experience Leadership Network, I personally am really pleased and excited to be part of the partnership with the network. And I can say from the steering committee on the network, we are all really, really thrilled to be partners in this endeavor. Anytime a person with lived experience can be part of a campaign to reduce homelessness, it truly means a lot. Coming from a lived experience background and having spent over 2 years on the cold, hard streets of Winnipeg, I can tell you that it brings out the passion to keep working, and it brings out the responsibility in a person like myself to actually take part in anything that has to do with ending homelessness or reducing homelessness. And I think that this campaign, being national in scope and being able to speak and be part of conversations with politicians that can actually make a real difference in this country on homelessness. We need to do these things. We need to be at those tables. And, having spent time on the streets, having lived through the day-to-day trauma of getting by minute to minute, hour to hour, day after day without coming into extreme harm is really, really tough at times, and what that does is it just brings out the strength of will and spirit in a person with lived experience, and the wisdom to take part in things like this that helps us really talk about the intimate issues of homelessness that perhaps other people don't know, and that we can bring that participation to the partnership and in the ad campaign. I always say that a person with lived experience is like a color man in a whether in a sporting television broadcast. You have a commentator calling the game. You have a color commentator saying why things happen. The color commentator will call the game as it happens. He will say what he sees, but the color commentator adds the intimate details. He will say why this player made that move, why the coach made that move, what the intimate details of the game were about, why that mistake was made, and how to correct that mistake. And that's what lived experience brings to tables like this, brings to campaigns like this. We are the color commentator for the people who really can call a game and set it up, and we will give the intimate details. So for us, as a partner, we have a say at the table, and bring that just a little bit different perspective, bring that perspective of experience to the table, where something might be missed. We can jump in and say, okay, what about that? What about this? And to do this on a national level is really, really important. As we know, the federal government is taking real steps in including lived experience engagement at the top tables, and this is following in that vein. And we are thrilled to be part of the partnership that is in place for the ad campaign. And I really urge people to get involved in the campaign, because it's we got a long way to go in ending homelessness, and I don't necessarily like using that word, but to reducing homelessness in a big way. In Winnipeg, we lose 100 lives a year to homelessness across the country, thousands and thousands. Like, we need to stop that process. We need to stop and reduce the loss of life. And the only way we're going to do that is by bringing more housing into the equation. And this campaign will help do that. And thanks for the time. And now I'll turn it over to Steph to start the slide presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Al, for introducing me and for taking the time today to help us build the excitement for the Vote Housing campaign, which we're really, really excited about. And so appreciative to have you and the Canadian Lived Experience Leadership Network on board. So thank you for that. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us. I know everyone is really busy. And so we really hope to get you excited about the Vote Housing campaign. Yeah, so just go to the next slide, just to go over basically what you can expect from us today. So we are going to talk about the campaign, the brand, the objectives. We'll go a little bit into the phases and the tactics, and then we want to spend some time ending on a call to action to let you know how you folks can help and basically why you're here today. So the campaign, the basics, the Vote Housing is going to be a national nonpartisan housing campaign with the goal and intention to end homelessness and housing need in Canada. And basically we really want to bring that to this election that we are expecting to happen sometime this year. Vote Housing, kind of who's at the table at this point, is my organization, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, the Canadian Lived Experience Leadership Network, and the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association. But really where the work is going to be happening is with partners that will be bringing on board, endorsers, volunteers. Basically, we're really going to see and empower Canadians who are going to be voting and to pledge to vote housing. So if they pledge to vote housing, the idea is that we're going to see, housing and homelessness committed to in party platforms. And really the goal is that this is going to be the largest nonpartisan housing advocacy campaign ever in Canada, with the intention of mobilizing thousands and thousands and thousands of Canadians to pledge to vote housing in this upcoming federal election. Next slide, Zane. Thanks. And we're not doing this completely with nothing to go on. For the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, we sort of got our feet wet in the last year. Of course, after the pandemic, hopefully many of you have heard of the Recovery for All campaign. This was a campaign we started last May, and the intention there was to ensure that, any budget that we saw come from the federal government included an economic recovery plan that would boost everyone and anyone, especially those who are often marginalized by plans like that or aren't seen. We really wanted to bring visibility to ending homelessness and having the necessary housing and supports to make that happen. And out of that campaign, we had over 24,000 supporters, over 120 endorsing organizations, 37 letter campaigns. And this was really incredible for us because we're a very, very small but mighty team at the CAH. But thanks to folks who got involved, we had sent over 758,000 letters to the federal government alone and some provincial governments. We had, for the videos that we put out, some of them you can see on the screen right now, we had over 1.6 million views, and we reached, at the end of the day, 3.9 million Canadians. So for us at the CEH, that's just one campaign that we're bringing to the table. And I'm going to pass it over to the wonderful Dallas Alderson to speak to some of the work and campaign advocacy campaigns that CHRA and CHF Canada have done.
Sure. Thanks so much, Steph. Yeah, so there really has been, a lot of work across the sector over the last few years. Recovery for All was a super important and impressive campaign. For my organization, the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, we've also been, really deep into advocacy for a number of years. The two pictures you see on the right-hand side of your screen are just a couple of, from a couple of events that we held. We've been really involved in federal elections, certainly the 2015 and 2019 elections. We had a number of events at co-ops with candidates, and those kind of relationships that we built through those events were then leveraged when folks were elected. We had many co-ops writing their candidates over the course of those two elections, and then as part of some campaigns in between as well on specific issues. So lots of campaigning in our history. And I can't speak for CHRA, but their rep just wasn't able to join us today. So I will just briefly share what I do know about their incredible work advocating for an urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing strategy. This has been ongoing for some time. I know we're getting very, very close, that work continues, but the federal government has made, I think, some commitments that will result soon in large measure because of CHRA's advocacy and their Indigenous caucus's advocacy on this issue into a distinct Indigenous housing strategy. So that work has been incredible as well. So as you can sort of gather, our three organizations have been doing a lot of advocacy over the years. Including, at least on our side, although the others as well, on elections. And so really the opportunity here, and what's so exciting, is that we're joining forces, and we're really identifying the next federal election as the key moment to move the marker in a really big way on affordable housing and homelessness. So that's what's exciting, and we'll dig a little further into the details about what we want to do and how we think we'll be able to achieve it. So at a high level, the idea here is really to combine what we know works, what we have experience doing, and what we know the best practices are. So both in terms of the grassroots on the ground work. I spoke to some of the co-op housing experience with doing events at co-ops. That's been really effective grassroots work, but there's also been, and of course we know that elections will be waged also online. There's so much in the digital space that we want to do, can do. So this campaign is really about combining the grassroots piece and the digital advocacy to build, as Steph said, the largest ever nonpartisan housing campaign. So just, I guess, a small comment too on how we're going to get there with different organizations. So indeed, we really want to build partnerships, building on the partnership we've created for this campaign with the 4 national organizations with other organizations, right? And really having partnerships that make sense for them, that enable them to participate, and we sort of grow our reach that way, and have a campaign that makes sense across the country. So really having partnerships as the basis of the campaign, alongside that grassroots and digital advocacy approach, will be really critical. Next slide. So digging a little further into some of the specifics, of course, we really can't be present in all 338 ridings across the country. So we're going to be focusing on about 70. So ridings that we know are going to be competitive. Also ridings where we know there's a strong resonance of our issues. Affordable housing and homelessness resonates strongly. That will include some ridings where there's a really strong co-op housing component. So there's a number of factors, but we're going to be honing in on 70 to really target where we'll be able to have the most impact. And really, in terms of what we want to do ultimately in these 70 ridings is just showcase that there is a whole bunch of people and organizations behind the campaign. We want to showcase that our case is very, very strong. Candidates will have to pay attention to this issue because there's so many voters behind it, and ultimately the next federal government will need to as well. We want to grow a national coalition. So we're looking to get as many endorsers, both organizations and individuals, as we can to pledge to vote housing. And in that way, we'll really be able to demonstrate the strength of our coalition, the numbers behind those who care about these issues. And finally, we'll work to get out the vote and make clear to the different parties that yes, people care about this issue, but they're also going to vote on this issue. They're going to get out to the polls and vote on this issue. Next slide. And the brand. So, in any kind of campaign, I think it's, we can all agree it's important to have kind of defined and clear messaging. But I think for us, it's especially important working across the 4 organizations to have something that's, quite straightforward, values-based, and really action-oriented. So you can see some of the colors and the vote housing, of course, slogan that we've attached to the campaign. And so, this really is meant to transcend the specific messages across our 4 partner organizations into something that's resonant across the country and super action oriented. So next slide. And there's the actual logo. The colors were carefully chosen, bright, optimistic. We believe these issues can largely be addressed with good policy choices if they're front and center for the next federal government. So that's our thinking there. Of course, also not colors associated with any of the federal parties. So being strategic here, but that's the branding that the 4 partner organizations have landed on. Okay, back to you, Steph.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a very difficult process to come down to those colors, but I think we're really excited about the colors we arrived at because, of course, we don't want to, as being as nonpartisan as humanly possible, we didn't want to show any favorites or hint at that with our color scheme. So so I'm just going to go over the phases. Essentially, it's a 3-phase plan that we are working on. So now until mid-June, so the date that we are officially launching will be June 17th. We are hoping by that point, from now until then, that we basically we're doing a few of these webinars. We're working on getting endorsers, volunteers, and folks sort of into that first circle, essentially, so that we can start sharing the information, sharing the strategy, sharing the components, and building sort of that volunteer subscriber supporter list as quickly as we can, so that on June 17th, in mid-June, when we do launch, we kind of go from 0 to 100. So we're kind of going from sort of the worst, best kept secret that Vote Housing Campaign is right now into wow, what is going on? Like, I'm seeing this everywhere. There's all of a sudden all these tweets across Canada, Facebook. I'm just seeing this beautiful brand popping across. What is Vote Housing? So that sort of phase leads us into phase 2, where we're hoping for that campaign growth. So as we're capturing those folks, we're making those connections now. When we start reaching out, we're hoping to sort of build interest, get people in the door so that they can start volunteering. So that's that point where we're really going to like quietly start mobilizing voters, those local groups, to sort of build out what vote housing is, so that by the time in phase 3, when the writ drops, so the election officially begins, those 2 months we're really able to hit the ground running. People have their materials, they have their tools, they know the plan. Everyone's received some kind of training. the materials, everything, and are ready to do things like go door knocking or have, you know, difficult or really fun conversations about what to look for in party platforms so that people pledge to vote housing. And I'll pass it off to Zane to talk a little bit more about what those tactics are going to be in phase 3.
Thank you, Steph, and thank you, Dallas and Al, for you know, the comments and the presentation thus far. I'll jump into the tactics a bit, but before I do, you know, I really wanted to underline something Dallas was mentioning regarding the campaign, which is, you know, at the end of the day, everything we are trying to do on this campaign will be in service of a ultimate goal, and that goal, yes, it's to, you know, end homelessness, have more online affordable housing across the country, no doubt. But as the goal within the confines of this campaign, and may I call it a movement that we want to try to build, is to ensure that if we build a coalition of everyday Canadians that is large enough, that is loud enough, that is mobilized, then our issues are undeniable. That our call to action from whatever political party forms the next government, because we are a nonpartisan campaign, is undeniable. That housing is on the agenda, that it cannot be avoided to be on the agenda. It can't be dithered, there's no heel dragging, because our coalition is large enough. So everything we're thinking about in this campaign is in service of, A, ensuring the branding of our issue is out there and visible and loud, and I'll talk to you about how you can help with that. But it is all in service at the end of the day to ensure that the coalition of everyday Canadians, which starts with us, those that are in and around the sector that have a connectivity to what we're talking about, no doubt starts with us. But as we grow it, you know, by that election time, if we are large enough in parts of the country where this election is going to be won, and in all other parts of the country, and I'll talk to you about that as well, we become undeniable. We become an undeniable force because we have to be listened to. So if we become an undeniable force, our issues also become undeniable. And that, to me, is the exciting opportunity. That is the big swing here. That is the ambitious sort of swing that then dictates, okay, I guess if we want that to happen, if we want this issue to forever be undeniable in the public zeitgeist and conversation for any political party, I don't care what color jersey they wear, then okay, the tactics we have to take on are going to be that of what amasses political power. In order to talk to political power, we need to amass it. And thereby, we're going to do what a political party would do in this election. Now, I will say, with a budget that is going to be a fraction, but I believe our core asset here is each other, and I'll talk to you about that in a second as well. So what we're going to do is merge the best of what a standard political or advocacy marketing campaign would do on the digital side, and combine that with what a political campaign would do in what we call the grassroots side of things. So let me just tease out a few of these. I'll go into some of them in some detail, but to give you a sense in terms of perhaps our tactical ambition and frankly, our strategic ambition related to that. So on the digital side, we're looking at a website. It's going to be focused on sign up, getting as many Canadians in the door into that campaign, right? That's our core. Right now, you can help with that. And I'll talk to you about that, but getting people in the door on this campaign in a really easy, values-based understanding that, yeah, you know what? Everyone does deserve a reasonable place to call home in this country. That is not a high bar. If you think that's a low enough bar, we want you on this campaign. And then what we want to do is elevate your level of engagement. We want to get you to sign up, and then maybe if you got some time, contribute a couple of hours to be a digital organizer online or offline in your community. So we're going to try to do that, elevate that level of engagement, get people to jump in at one level, and hopefully in 3 months, 6 months, whenever this election is called, are ready to mobilize not just themselves, but their friends and family, their social networks, and hopefully their community. That's the 101s of a political campaign. Get someone in and then try to elevate their engagement authentically based on what they care about. And we're going to try to do our best to do that. So that's where the web and the sign up comes in. We're going to do a little bit of advertising, but I have to be honest with you. This is a campaign that, as its budget set right now, is going to be a mere fraction of our political parties and frankly, a fraction of many other advocacy campaigns in the space. I have to be honest with you about that, right? There's going to be other campaigns that are going to try to suck the oxygen. At the same time, we understand that, we acknowledge that, we totally get it. But what I feel like we may not have necessarily in the dollars and cents, and you could certainly help us with that, we feel like we have in the people power. But we're going to do a little bit of advertising to primarily not spend so much on the brand and try to get these beautiful colors out there, but mainly to target folks that we feel like could be great allies to this campaign, get them into the fold, everyday Canadians, and elevate their level of engagement to organize, to mobilize, to speak on behalf of the campaign. We'll then do iterative videos to try to get some content out there constantly, email marketing and mini campaigns in between, talk about different issues every single week, kind of like a political party would do. And then we're going to do something called relational and digital organizing. And I'll spend a few seconds on this one because I think relational organizing is super important. What we do not have in money, we have in enthusiasm and people. And the way we grow our coalition is not by spending more, but it's by ensuring that we have people that are engaged and we have a process and a system that allows them to maximally engage themselves on that campaign. And what I mean by that quite simply is, how do you take folks that are supporters on the campaign, they start as supporters, and you turn them into decentralized campaign managers of their social network? I'll say that again. How do you take someone who just wants to come in and say, yeah, I'll put my hand up, and then you say, you know what you actually have is access to a social network disproportionately, a group of people that you care about, that care about your opinion disproportionately. Can we use your time and your knowledge to turn not just yourself into one vote that shows up, but into someone that galvanizes and brings out a dozen more votes based on who you know? And if we do that at scale, that's our secret weapon. And so we want to be able to create a campaign infrastructure that allows the people that are most engaged on the campaign to meet each other, to model behavior, and to formulate that sense of community and growth through relational organizing. Let me move to the other side of the spectrum. What's the grassroots stuff? Well, it's that stuff that you see on the ground. It's that stuff where you hit up the doors. We have lawn signs, leaflet drops, people organizing in their geographic communities. The amazing asset we have here is, using some of the past advocacy work that Steph and Dallas laid out. We feel like we've got a base of people at least interested and itching to go, as well as some of the folks that we have across the country, thanks to the Co-op Housing Federation, that are geographically in these spaces. We feel like the combination of those two things, alongside hopefully your support as organizations and individuals, can get off to a really promising start on what we call the grassroots or the field side of our campaign. So at the end of the day, Vote Housing sits in the middle. Digital to bring people in, to brand us, to elevate levels of engagement, and regional organizing to mobilize on the ground, touch people where we know, especially where we know where this campaign is going to be won and fought, and bring folks into the fold. The final piece I will add is that while we've mentioned those 70 ridings regionally in the Lower Mainland, island outside Montreal and Quebec and the GTA, this campaign is for everyone across the country. The fact is, regional and digital organizing allows folks to contribute to the bottom line of this campaign, to grow that vote threshold, to grow their engagement, to build on that community regardless. So we're going to be very, very cognizant of that while this campaign has some geographic focus, we want to ensure that we allow people to play wherever they are. And there's opportunities both on the digital and the field side in order to do that across the country, wherever someone might be. How to help. Okay, so let me start with this slide, which in previous presentations, if you've heard me speak, I bring up quite often, but I think it's so powerful for the purposes of what we're doing. This is FDR, and he has this really legendary quote, which he says, "I agree with you. I want to do it. Now go make me do it." And in many ways, this is the thesis statement of why we've structured the campaign in the way we have. This quote, in the 1930s still holds true some 70 years, 80 years, 90 years later, right? Which is political parties respond to movements. They don't create the movements, they respond to the movements. Politics, we've often said, is a trailing indicator of where society is. Politics is the trailing indicator of where society is. Often we talk about, oh, look who got elected here, or look how that happened here. Often politics is the last thing to fall into place after the folks and the people and society has already moved in that direction. Rarely you'll have a few political parties and individuals kind of say, this is where we need to go, and wait and try to drag folks. But we know that regardless of whichever political party forms the next government, we need to create the parade to allow that political party to ensure housing is on the agenda. And that means that all of us as individuals and organizations need to create the heat and the light, which is the brand and the action and the amplification, but also create the coalition of everyday Canadians, which is our key towards the action. So we create the heat and the light with the branding and the visibility and the advertising. But if we say we've got this coalition of everyday Canadians, this parade that, you know, of folks across the country that are diverse, that come from different backgrounds, that have different reasons for supporting this campaign, we become undeniable. And I love using that word because I really believe that is our objective here, is to become undeniable beyond one campaign to create a movement where that is able to happen. So what does that look like in practical terms today? Well, we've got a ladder of engagement today, and I talked about that ladder of engagement for individuals as they come into the campaign. We also have a ladder of engagement for organizations, should you be willing and have the desire to support. And very simply, the first rung on said ladder is, can you support us? Once we launch on June 17th, signing up on the website as an individual, it's going to mean a lot to us. You'll hear from us, you'll join the list, you'll be part of that parade, and we hope to have tens of thousands of people, you know, join us on that parade, everyday Canadians, to help us with that basic task of supporting. And then we'll kind of help you as individuals elevate that to volunteering, to doing other stuff on the campaign. So that's the first rung of the ladder. Second rung of the ladder, which I'm hoping a lot of folks on this call might be able to help us with, is endorsing. Can you endorse the campaign? Very simply, can you fill out a form, and we've got a link for this, where you submit your organizational logo, a small 1 or 2 sentence justification as to why you're supporting the campaign. And what that will allow us to do is 2 things. We will be ensuring that your logo is on our website before launch on June 17th, so that when we start, we don't just start with the 4 organizations here. We start with the hundreds, hopefully, knock on wood, of other organizations that are joining us in this stride, in this particular movement. And I should add on that point, as we have 4 organizations here, we are also in constant talks with some partners in Quebec to also add Quebec-specific partners, knowing that that is just going to be hugely important if we want to run a truly pan-Canadian campaign, which is absolutely our intention. So I should make mention of that. But on this endorsing side, if I can go back to a second, right? If you provide us your logo, we would put you on the website, and then we've got one other element to that ask on the endorsement side. Can you help us distribute the campaign? Can you help us on launch day amplify the campaign? We know from our past advocacy experience, and I'm sure you've felt this as well, that the trajectory of a campaign is set on day one. Whether it is going to take, 6 weeks to get to the same point that a good launch would have, or it's going to, happen on the first day, is really dependent on a trajectory that is set. And what helps us set a trajectory is not the fact that we can spend tens of thousands of dollars on launch day to make sure that this is seen by everyone, but we've got people, we've got individuals and organizations that many of you speak on behalf of, to say, you know what, yeah, happy to help you out. And the way we do that is, if you endorse, we'd send you some copy to send to your social media on behalf of your organizations. We'd send you some copy to send to your email lists in order to kind of elevate that level of engagement and tell folks that are members of your organization or supporters on your supporter list. And if we can do that at scale, and that is our hope, that we can then have a launch that on the day of, we go from never heard of Vote Housing to at least a small group of people within our relative orbit to say, oh, what is this campaign? And that strong launch day is going to be super, super helpful to having us be successful and set a trajectory for this campaign, a trajectory of viability, of credibility, and a trajectory of just overall vibrancy that we need, because we know that this campaign just can't succeed, with ourselves and our organizational partners. We know we need to hit everyday Canadians, and the way we do that is we penetrate beyond our orbit. And the only way we can do that is on the first sort of launch day, is have you join us to help us endorse and amplify. So if that is something you're open to, would be very, very grateful if that is something you'd be able to contribute to us, and then still stay with us beyond launch day to keep, the beat on the campaign, to help us distribute other materials. We'd meet with you on a regular basis to help talk you through where we're at, what's going on, how things are going, how we can ensure we reflect all perspectives as we go through the drumbeats of this campaign. And I just see Steph has thrown in that endorsement form into that chat box as well. So the supporter is the first rung, the endorser is that second rung, the contributor is that third rung, right? Which is the, if you're able to do the first two, we're extremely grateful. If you're able to do a bit more, if you have the ability to make a financial contribution, and if you have the ability to perhaps, second staff from your team to join the campaign. Dallas, Steph, have what I'd call day jobs at their respective organizations, but are also spending a bulk of their time going forward on this campaign. If you've got folks in your organization or in your network that you'd also like to second to this campaign, here's the pitch I'd have very quickly for you. Firstly, campaigns are a pressure cooker experience, and that may sound harrowing and hard up front, but what I will promise is at the back end of that campaign, you get a new set of skills, you get a new set of perspectives, and you get a new set of abilities that you can take back to your organization. And one of our implicit, and frankly, I should say explicit goals of doing this campaign in such an ambitious way to take this big swing outside of the grow capacity and be undeniable, which I think is very important and the primary. But if I can add a secondary, it's to grow capacity amongst all of our organizations. And when I say all of our organizations, I don't mean just the four of us, I mean organizations broadly. So if you have folks that you feel like could, be useful to our campaign, we could certainly use them. We'd almost want to say that, we'd love to have them incubated in the campaign, come out of it with a unique set of skills that hopefully they can then apply to the sector and to your organization on the back end as well. So if that's something that interests you, we'll send a follow-up email to all of this with more information. And then, of course, there's other ways. If you know folks in your organization that may not be able to be fully seconded, we're always looking for volunteers, and I'll talk about volunteers in just one second, across the country to do a variety of tasks, sharing your email lists or sharing content constantly, secondment of staff, as I mentioned. So those things would classify in the contributor category. So very simply, signing up on the first day when we launch, amazing, thank you. If you could endorse, help us amplify and stay with us there on in to keep updated and help distribute our campaign materials to your network, we'd love you in as an endorser. If you could take one more step on that ladder, have some capacity financially or with staff or with folks on your teams, we would be more than welcome and grateful for that as well. So those are the three sort of steps we have. I also mentioned, what are we looking for? Well, secondments from your team, to be a little bit more specific, communicators, marketers, designers, if you got those folks, we'd be super grateful to have them on board. Anyone who can help with field organizing or volunteering or community engagement, if you have folks that have had that experience or want to be interested in taking on roles in that area, right? Because I said it's about capacity building as well. Once again, extremely grateful to have those individuals. And then of course, financial contributions, if possible, we'd be more than grateful for that as well. Did someone say volunteers? We sure did. So what we're looking for on the volunteer side, just for the sake of completeness, three major sort of segments of volunteers. The first one, folks in your community, right? 2 to 4 hours a week, helping a door knock, helping a phone call, helping to do things that they would for a partisan political campaign. If they feel like that's a bridge too far, Vote Housing is here. You can help us out. You can help us out with a time commitment that's flexible, that works for you. We want to grow movements in different parts of the country. Online, you can be anywhere in the country and we can use your skills to digitally organize. Help us set up Zoom events online, Zoom coffee parties, set up events and rallies, etc., and be able to kind of do all that sort of stuff specifically to help organize either people in your social or personal networks across any part of the country. And finally, leads. We're looking for individuals that are able to lead us in every part of this activity to almost take on the leadership ability in specific regions and polls across the country to help us say, yep, I'm happy to be the organizer in this particular area of the GTA or the 905 or other parts of the country in Quebec, and say, I can help lead the volunteers, I can help structure it. With our campaign support, we're looking for folks to help us regionally lead. So I've talked a lot. What's next? Well, secondments and financial contributions. I mentioned the 3-rung ladder. Endorsements, Steph has shared that link, and we'll also share everything in a follow-up email, including a copy of this presentation and a recording of it. I see some questions in the chat about that. So yes, indeed, that will also happen. And then June 17th, we'll come out with a website, a campaign video. We'll have our pledge. We'll have volunteer recruitment all online. We would love your assistance prior to that to endorse the campaign, to help us amplify. And if you're in the position to help us contribute, to allow that we'd be very welcome to that as well. So with that being said, I just wanted to thank you to everyone on this call to let us go through that presentation. If it's not already clear, I think it's a campaign that has a ton of potential, a ton of ambition. And I think if I could speak for Al, Steph, and Dallas, I think we're all very enthusiastic about what can be accomplished with this new Vote Housing brand and the partnerships that we have and the partnerships that we hope to grow over the course of the coming weeks and months. So I think we're happy to jump into Q&A, discuss any questions, discuss any elements that are in the chats, and go from there.
Sure, I'm just going to hop in. I'm going to start with the questions that we were asked through the Q&A button. And if you have any questions, please ask now as well. So the first question, I've seen this a few times, are the campaign message points. What are they going to be? Just a little bit more information about the campaign demands, if we can be more specific. Zane, I don't know if you want to touch, or Dallas, if you want to touch on that.
So we've got a 6-point plan that's currently in draft right now. I will say 2 things on this. Number one, happy to share that with you as kind of we finalize that in the coming days and weeks. Number 2, our campaign is really around housing need and homelessness as like the headlines. And we've kept that intentionally as a value statement rather than a very specific policy platform. So what you will see from this campaign when we launch is a platform of some kind, but it'll be high level, where we'll have 6 key points of what we're looking for, the needs assessment behind those points. And Dallas, you may be able to speak to a few of them right after. But let me tell you about the deliberate reason to keep it at a values level. If this was a campaign for us, by us, and I say us as in individuals within the sector, we'd do a very different campaign, right? We probably have a policy point that was several pages on a PDF that was super deep, and that's what we wanted to use to kind of sell to our prospective political parties and to each other in many ways. And yes, this campaign is about selling it to each other. It absolutely is. But we're keeping it high level because we know 2 things. Number one, we want to have an easy onboard for everyday Canadians to jump on. We want themselves to see themselves in this campaign. And I think the more broader we kind of keep the value statement while still having teeth to it, not to say that it wouldn't have any level of specificity to it, but the broader we're able to keep this as a value systems, we feel like we're able to onboard more folks who see themselves in the current crisis in whatever angle is appropriate for them. Secondly, we know that if we were to go deep on a policy, we would probably risk in certain points alienating certain political parties, and we have to be super careful with our campaign to be on the record about it, to be totally nonpartisan, right? So in order to do that, we're keeping it at a values-based system to allow flexibility for political parties to see themselves in this solution, right? The way we become undeniable is we ensure our coalition is large enough, and we ensure it's loud enough, but simultaneously ensure that political parties see a level of flexibility to get to the goals that we have, not necessarily the prescribed outcomes that we're looking from a beat to beat level. If this was an advocacy campaign for an existing government, a la RFA and otherwise, we might take a slightly different angle, but this kind of gives you maybe a sense of justification in terms of the angle that we're taking. I don't know, Dallas, if you wanted to jump in from the policy side about some of the points that we have on the table to share with folks, and we're happy to do that as we finalize it in the coming days here as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to just to give a flavor. As Zane mentioned, we're still working on them. They're not, completely final. In particular, we're making sure we're having conversations with different regional organizations to make sure there's no sort of regional nuance that we need to make sure we incorporate, in particular in Quebec. But with that being said, I can give you sort of a flavor of the 6 points. So one, absolutely focused on significant federal investment to end and prevent homelessness, supportive housing, a big focus there. An Indigenous housing strategy for urban, rural, and northern communities will feature as one of our 6 asks, as well a significant federal investment to construct and acquire non-market housing. So that includes social, co-op, and affordable housing. We want to see a commitment to the progressive right to housing, and we want to expand rental assistance to low-income households. So that's sort of a flavor of the 6 points. Still working on, the really specific language, but as Zane said, I think we're all committed across the 4 organizations to 6 points that are pretty high level, so we can bring as many people into the big tent as possible. Hope that helps.
Yeah,
hopefully that answers the question Kathy had too. So this is not simply platitudes, right? So we've got these 6 things that they're looking for. In fact, a few of them even have some numbers attached to them as well. And what I think perhaps I can clarify my statement as it relates to political parties is not necessarily saying you have to solve it in this way, right? And solving it in this particular way, knowing that this is a need and a goal that we want, is very much where we're going to stick with on the policy side of things, and we're happy to share that with folks in the coming days.
Absolutely. I think we're really close to a final version, but there will be specifics included for sure. And I just see a quick question about charitable tax receipts. Absolutely, we'll be able to provide those. And I think the last question that I've seen are about strategies moving beyond a digital campaign while remaining safe during COVID. I think I'll take a crack at this and then pass it off maybe to you, Zhang, because I think you did talk a bit about this, but perhaps you can expand. So the idea is right now that we are going to be producing a lot of these materials, digital and physical as well. So I think Dallas had a slide sort of showing shirts, but there will be lawn signs, pamphlets, buttons, stickers, that sort of thing that we're going to try and get across the country sort of to these specific groups that are with us and working with us when the writ drops. But yeah, I think as well, there's obviously a real conscious effort that we will be safe, and anything that we ask volunteers to do out in the real world outside of our doors, we'll be sure to follow the latest in any COVID like health restrictions and guidelines. So
yeah, I will just add to that. Yeah, I think COVID has taught a lot of campaigns, a lot of things over the course of the last year or so, year and a half. And one of the things is that a lot of the grassroots activities, we actually have an ability to maybe not do them as well, but try to take a stab at doing them online. So when I talk about things like, phone banks or, little Zoom parties, those will certainly be part of the suite to try to do some of the 1-to-1 or 1-to-12 or 1-to-15 style outreach. That would be very much part of a field group or a grassroots strategy to be able to try to do as much of that online as possible.
That's great. And we just have another question about when we will name the 70 ridings. So we are working on that list right now. We are looking at where a lot of the swing ridings will be, but I think it'll be a really great cross-section across Canada. So not just the major cities or the regions around them, but we're looking where there are areas that they're going to be hotly contested, where a lot of eyes will be following those races really closely as they flip between some of the parties. Great. Yeah, I think as far as when the 6 asks will be released, that'll be really soon. And folks who click that endorsement link that I shared and start getting on our newsletter list, you'll be the first to know, essentially. And that will be before June 17th for sure, because we want to give people as much information as possible right before we launch, or a few weeks before we launch as well. That's great. Are there any other questions? Just leave it a second there to see if there's any final thoughts or comments. And yes, charitable donations will receive charitable tax receipts for sure, for those more financial side contributions. As far as focusing on provincial elections, so right now, Vote Housing, with our capacity, we're really focused on the federal election that we suspect is coming down before the end of this year. So at this point, that's our focus. Yeah, and we did respond to Kathy's question. So just to reiterate, yeah, because we did that response verbally, we will be releasing those 6 points or 6 demands beforehand, and they will have they'll be sort of value-based, high level, but they will also have specific pieces in there as well, all really focused on ending homelessness and getting the necessary housing available, whether it's supportive or deeply affordable. So I'll have more specifics there. Great. Okay, seeing no more questions. Yeah, if anyone else wants to wrap, I just wanted to say from my point, you know, we're really, really excited to get this campaign and so grateful and appreciative just for the time that folks have shared with us today. It's a little bit of a long presentation, lots to go over, and I know there's still so much more information coming down the pipe, but we're really excited, and we really think that now is the time to get people mobilized and focused, as we saw over the pandemic, really push those inequities forward into sort of the mainstream spotlight. I think we want to build on that and continue to push it forward to really get the focus in at the federal level that ending homelessness and fixing the housing crisis are things that we all care about, and we want to see those things happen. Oh, and I think I saw a French question come in. Dallas, did you want to?
Oui, certainement. Donc, la question, c'est juste, est-ce qu'on peut utiliser les demandes pendant les élections municipales? Bien, surtout, les demandes peuvent être utilisées par n'importe qui, mais quand même, on va juste avoir une focus sur l'élection fédérale qu'on pense s'en vient en ce moment. Donc, oui, vraiment, c'est une focus sur le fédéral. En ce moment. I think we also have just one other question that came in before then on the timing, and it's a good one of sort of, you know, when we can firm up and share the policy points, you know, in advance of when an organization would consider endorsing. And I'm sure there's a way to send this perhaps to the list of folks who've signed up on this webinar. So as you know, you could access that without having to click that endorsement button.
Perfect. Well, Zane, Dallas, or Al, did you want to have any final wrap-up thoughts?
No, Steph, I'm good. Thanks everyone for your time and energy. Like we said, we're going to send all this stuff, including you know, this recording and the deck in the coming day or so. So you have all of this as we lead into June 17th. We're going to firm up other items as well. So we'll try to keep this group updated in terms of where we are and try to get that trajectory for that initial launch day as positive as possible. But thank you for sacrificing your time on an incredibly busy day, and I'm sure part of an incredibly busy month for many, and hearing out this campaign, and looking forward to seeing and chatting with folks in the coming weeks prior to launch, and certainly hopefully seeing you side by side as we do launch in the coming days as well.
I just want to say, if there are any people who experienced listening today, we would really encourage you to join the Experienced Leadership Network and be part of a groundswell and a big movement where Experienced has a voice on a national level.
I'm just sharing their website in the chat there. Sorry. So yeah, again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We will have another webinar like this on Thursday. You may have seen that come out again, just because we couldn't capture everyone today. Wanted to give a few more opportunities. And of course, you'll hear a lot more from us in the lead up to our big launch day on June 17th. So thanks again.